Hi, and welcome to the New Moon Knitting Podcast. I'm Hillary, and this is episode 10. So, welcome back. On today's podcast, I have one finished object. I have updates on 4 of my whips, and I have a little bit of knitting plans to talk about the end that I started the conversation about in my last podcast. So, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so my finished object today are my Slow Morning DK socks by Camille Hang. This is a free cuff down DK weight sock pattern that has all over ribbing. The pattern comes in 3 sizes. I knit the second size, which actually, according to my foot measurements, is a little bit too big, but I'll kind of explain my reasoning when I show the socks and kind of go into more details about it. It is knit on a US 2.5, which is a 3mm needle. I do not have a US 2.5 needle, so I ended up going up to a US 3, which is a 3.25mm needle. And the gauge on this is 28 stitches and 40 rows over 4 inches. The pattern recommends a couple of different DK weight yarns: Sandus Garn Perfect, Garn Studio Drops Fable, and Coop Knits Socks Yeah DK. I used 2 yarns held together. I used Cascade Eco Plus Hemp in the color Mocha and GGH Mohair Melange in the color Gray. So these socks, I mentioned it when I showed them off last week, but initially I had started making a pair of these for my aunt for Christmas, the way the pattern is written, so with all over ribbing. And I realized when I was doing that the intention of them was for them to be like bed socks, sleep socks. My mom told me my aunt really likes to sleep in socks year round, but especially in the winter. So I wanted like a really nice pair of socks you throw on before you go to bed to keep your feet warm all night. And just the ribbing, all over ribbing, the way that sock looked to me, it just wasn't giving me that really like soft, comfy, ready for bed kind of vibe, I guess. And so I used all of the measurements that are recommended in the pattern. And instead of doing the ribbing, I just did stockinette. So I did a nice long cuff, then stockinette for the rest of it rather than doing that all over ribbing. And I really loved how they came out. I think my aunt really liked them. I gave them to her for Christmas. And I liked them so much though that I realized immediately I wanted my own pair. And so as soon as I got home from visiting family, I cast on these socks and now they are ready to go. So let me show you. So these are the finished socks. You can see the mohair and that hemp yarn creates a little bit of marling in them. I just think it looks like a very it's a luxurious color, I think, this gray. Plus with like the halo from the mohair and everything, that makes it also feel a little bit fancier. So like I said, these are kind of the pattern, but I made a bunch of modifications. So I knit this cuff. I did 20 rounds of 2x2 rib for the cuff. I cast on the amount of stitches the pattern recommended. Then I just did straight stockinette for 30 rounds. I did the heel the way the pattern recommends. I think it's just a standard wrap and turn heel. Then I did the foot, and then I did the toe just the way it's written in the pattern. The pattern is pretty easy to follow. It does kind of make some assumptions that like you're familiar with wrap and turn heels, and so I wouldn't say it's a great first sock pattern, but it's a good pattern. Like I said, I made these with positive ease, which is a very weird thing to do for a sock, but I made these for 2 purposes. 1, to wear when I'm sleeping, and 2, to wear when it's very cold and I'm working from home. So I don't always love the sensory experience of wearing socks to bed. I find like sometimes they can be too constricting. So making these a little bigger, I thought like gives my feet a little room to breathe, but also keeps them super, super warm. The other reason I made them a little big is when I'm cold in the winter, I often wear 2 pairs of socks. plus slippers. Like when my feet are cold, I'll do anything to try to warm them up. And so I thought making these a little bit bigger would make them easier to slip on over another pair of socks. Again, without them feeling too tight, too constricting, but they're still, tight enough that they fit well on my foot and I can slide them into my slippers without them getting too bunched up. So yeah, definitely kind of a weird way to go about making socks, but that was my reasoning for these. Yeah, I haven't really worn them. I blocked them and I wanted them to look nice for the podcast. So I haven't worn them yet, but as soon as I stop filming, I'm going to throw these on and start getting the most out of them I can this winter. Yeah, so I think that's all I wanted to say about these. Again, with the changes I made, I probably should have just tried to find another pattern because these are barely what the initial pattern was. But for the last time on the podcast today, these are my sort of Sunday morning DK socks by Camille Hang. All right, let's move on to whips. So my first whip update today is on my Eurus Sweater by Eggio Knits. This is an all-over cabled sweater, but it is knit side to side. So sleeve and then across the body onto the other sleeve. The pattern comes in 3 sizes. I am knitting the first size. It is knit on a US 10, which is a 6mm needle, and the gauge is 16 inches and 20 rows for 4 inches. The suggested yarn is an Aran weight yarn. I am holding 2 yarns together, a worsted and a lace weight Surrey. So the worsted weight yarn is Cascade 220's Heathers in the color Lepidolite Heather. And the second color is Yarn Jam Surrey Halo in the color Seashell. And so this is getting harder every week to show because it's getting very big. But this is what my sweater looks like so far. So it kind of looks like it did last week, but let me explain. So this little stitch marker here, this little kitty cat, is where we left off last week. So I had done the sleeve up to the shoulder and then across the back, and I was about to cast on for the front. So this week I did all of the front and then I joined the shoulder back up again and I did, I don't know, like an inch or so. I didn't do that much more, but I finished the front of the sweater and I got to the other shoulder. And I really wanted to get to the shoulder because that meant I could finally try this on. I cast this on in November and it was, a lot of times if you work a raglan or, a lot of like top-down sweater, you can kind of put it on and see what it's going to look like. And I haven't been able to do that because of the construction. And so I was very excited to actually put it on. I will include a little bit of B-roll here of me trying it on and sort of what it looks like so far. I really like the fit. One modification I made was I made it a little less broad than the original pattern. So the original pattern has you knit, I think it's 22 centimeters before you do this split for the neck hole shaping. And I did 15 centimeters instead. So across both sides, right? That's about, I'm going to lose about 15 centimeters of width. But looking at the reviews of the pattern in Ravelry, it seemed like people mostly felt like it was a little bit too wide. And I was afraid if it was too oversized, one, I was going to run out of yarn because I forgot how much like cabling eats up yarn over stockinette or things like that. And two, I just thought it might be, the silhouette might not be what I wanted. So being able to kind of throw it on and see how much ease there's going to be, there still will be quite a bit of positive ease. I also know that when you're blocking cabling, it tends to grow a bit more than stockinette unless you're using superwash or something like that. And so I'm happy that I made that adjustment because I just think from the way I want to wear it, it would have felt too big, too wide, the sleeves too long if I had done it the way the pattern originally called for. So I'm really happy that I made that change. Other than that, doing exactly what the pattern says. I think these cables look so cool vertically like this. The honeycomb cable is my favorite cable of all time. I just, still loving it, still enjoying it. Still hoping end of January. That would be the goal. If I can get this done by the end of January, because then I can at least get like a month, maybe a month and a half's worth of wear out of it before it starts to get too warm here for me to try a big, heavy cabled sweater. The last thing I wanted to mention was I mentioned last time that I had to purchase another skein of the Surrey Halo. And because it's a hand-dyed yarn, there was a bit of a color difference between the yarn I had bought back in October and the one I purchased in late December, early January of this year. And that's, again, it's expected. That's why they tell you to buy, all the quantity of hand-dyed yarn at the same time in the same dye lot. But they're a little bit different. And I was kind of concerned you might be able to see that in the final product. And so I was thinking about how I could do helical knitting. And I know how it works in the round, but I didn't really know how to do it flat. And if you only have one ball of each color, you're doing 2 rows instead of 1. And so would that be too much of each ball while I'm going? Like, what's the recommended way to do that? So I did a little bit of looking and I found Very Pink Knits tutorial on knitting helical knitting flat and in the round. And in her pattern, in her video, she only uses 2 balls of yarn. She doesn't use 4 balls. So she's only changing the ball every other round. So she knit, purl, or front, right side, wrong side, then switch color, right side, wrong side. So I went ahead and did that, and I haven't done that much with it. It's just kind of where I joined up here. But even in person, I don't think you can tell. Again, the color difference is not that big. This is a very heathered sweater anyways, because the main purple color is heathered. And so, yeah, I don't think it's gonna be an issue at all to do it that way. So I'm just gonna keep working those 2 balls of Surrey every 2 rows until I get to the sleeve. And then I'll probably switch to more standard helical knitting where you're switching every round. All right, so that's it for this week. One last time, this is my Eurus Sweater by Eggio Knits. All right, my next update is on my Turtleneck Sweater by Naringarook. This is a classic turtleneck raglan sweater with broad, bold cuffs and hems. The pattern is knit on a US 7, which is a 4.5 millimeter needle. It comes in 8 sizes. I am knitting the size medium, which is the 3rd size. The gauge is 16 inches and 26 rows over 4 inches. The pattern recommends a DK weight yarn, Prosper Mohair DK. I'm using 2 yarns held together, Amano Skinny Yana in the color olive and Rising Tide Fiber Company's Montgomery Mohair in the color Old Salt. So my update this week, I didn't do that much on it, but I wanted to share it before I make a change. So last time I was here, I was almost done with the body and I had just started to cast on for the ribbing. So I did the ribbing. I did it a couple of rounds shorter than the pattern recommends, but I was pretty happy with the length of it. And then I cast off according to the pattern, which was not a stretchy cast off. And I think because of the size that I did and how much ease I ended up with, the non-stretchy bind off is not going to work for me. It's just when I pulled it on, it's tight when it goes over my chest. Again, I got some B-roll of me trying it on. Yeah, it's just tight, and it's very tight at the bottom. And so I think what I'm just gonna do is I wanted to show it before I did it, but I'm gonna do a little bit of sweater surgery. So I'm gonna run a lifeline back a couple of rows in this ribbing at the bottom, and then I will cast back on the stitches. I will probably do a little bit more ribbing. If I'm going to do it all over again, I think I want this a little longer. So I'll probably add another inch or so of ribbing down here at the bottom. And then I will do some kind of a stretchy bind off. So yeah, not a lot about this one this week. I just wanted to show that. And then Next time, hopefully I will have made the fix and I can let you know how successful I was at making those changes to the sweater. So overall though, I still love the color. I do like when I tried it on, I think it looks really nice. Yeah, I want to get it right though, so I get a lot of wear out of it. So all for today on the Turtleneck Sweater by Naringaruk. So the next whip I have is a brand new whip. I cast it on this week, and this was inspired by the socks that I just finished. So I liked the way those came out so much, and the idea of having like a couple of pairs of socks that are like halfway between socks and slippers, that I decided to cast on a second set of socks. So I chose the Basic Bed Socks by Emily Boldon. These are like a basic toe-up DK weight sock that has alternating heels, toes, and cuffs. It is another free DK weight sock pattern, which is great. The pattern uses, and I'm using, a US 4, which is a 3.5 millimeter needle, and it also uses a US 2.5, which is a 3 millimeter needle for the cuffs. I will probably do it all in the US 4 again, so it's a little more cozy and comfy kind of sock. The gauge is 24 stitches and 35 rows over 4 inches. It comes in 3 sizes, European size 36, 38, and 40. I am knitting the first size. So the pattern recommends a couple of different 8-ply yarns: Woolganic Organic Merino 8-ply DK, White Gum Wool 8-ply Superfine Merino, and Millpost Merino Superfine 8-ply. I wanted to do this project as part of my stash down, so I have a couple of single skeins of DK weight yarn. I had a little bit of the mohair melange and the Eco Plus hemp for the other pair of socks, so I thought I'll use those for the toes and heels. And then for the rest of the sock, I found in my stash another ball of this Solitude Wool Icelandic. This color is called Charcoal Marl. It's a 2-ply, 100% Icelandic wool yarn. And it is kind of rustic, so there's some thinner parts and thicker parts, but it's a very warm and cozy wool. Now, this yarn on the ball, it says, this yarn will felt. You know, do not agitate when you're washing it. It is a felty yarn. It's just going to felt. And I'm sure you're thinking, like, that's not a great yarn for a sock, Hillary, because your feet are going to agitate it. Like, that's just, socks get a lot of wear because they're in constant contact with, you know, your feet and the ground and the oils in your skin. And there's a good chance those socks are going to felt. So why? Why did you choose it? And I'm aware of that. I am accepting that these will probably felt. The reason I went ahead and did it was, one, it's part of my process with like using my stash. I didn't know how to use this. This is maybe not the first option for this yarn, but it's getting creative with what I have. And I really love this yarn as a concept, and I will wear it as a sock more than I would a hat or a scarf or anything like that. Second of all, again, with the way I'm planning to wear these socks, which is like mostly when I'm crawling into bed or working remotely from home, which I work a very sedentary job, I'm at a computer all day, they will get a lot less wear than a regular sock. You know what I mean? They won't get a lot of wear and tear. And also, again, I'm going to use that more durable yarn, the mohair and hemp, for the toes and the heels that are going to get the most wear. And then I'm just going to accept that it's part of the beautiful knitting process if my socks get a little felted over time. I think it's just going to like lead into it feeling more like a slipper sock, which is what I'm going for anyway. So that's my thinking about that. That's my reasoning about this. It's not the perfect, but it's perfect for this moment right now. So that's why I'm doing it. All right, so I did not do that much on it, but I'll show you my little sock. So here we go. So like I mentioned, these are toe-up socks. So you start with Judy's Magic cast on, and then you do your toe increases. And so for this part, I used that mohair and hemp held together. And then I switched to the Icelandic for the body. It's interesting the way that the marling is working, because this to me looks a lot lighter. I guess it doesn't when you actually look at it, but this reads lighter to me than the way the colors are working up, but that's totally fine. So it's a very low contrast between the toes and the body, and I think that's totally fine for what I want with these socks. I did toe up for these. I found a toe up pattern because I really want to use every single ounce of this that I can. And so if I do a toe up sock, I can knit the foot, knit the heel, and then just start the leg and weigh this and just stop when I've used up 50% of this ball of yarn, probably closer to like 48%, just to account for any inconsistencies. So once I've used half, if I did a cuff down sock, it's harder to estimate out those numbers. I don't know how much yarn the foot is going to use. That foot is a pretty standard size, but you can make the cuff as long or as short as you want to. So that was why I chose a toe up sock. Again, this is a free pattern, so that's awesome. I have a couple options now for DK weight socks that are free if I want to make gifts for people and things like that. So yeah, not a lot else to say about this, but yeah, liking how it's looking so far. One more time, this is the Basic Bed Socks pattern by Emily Bouldoin. All right, and my last whip for today is also a new cast on. I cast on an Oslo Hat by Petite Knit. So this is a classic stockinette hat with like a double folded brim. The pattern comes in 4 sizes, from child to adult man. I am knitting the second size, which is the junior size. It's knit on a US 4, which is a 3.5 millimeter needle, and the gauge is 22 stitches and 32 rows to 4 inches. The pattern uses 2 yarns held together, Filcolana Arwetta and Sandnesgarn Sunday. I am using some Lion Brand Respun. So this is the yarn. This color is called Blush Rosé. So it's this really pretty heathery pinky color. It's kind of similar to my sweater, if I'm honest, but yeah, very pretty color. And I have pretty much finished. I'm about to join for the brim, the brim. So this is what it looks like so far. Really all it is at this point is a big stockinette tube. So you just knit stockinette for the desired length, and then you fold it in half and you pick up your cast on stitches with the live stitch in the next round. So what I've done for the time being is I've added a bunch of stitch markers around the end to try to ensure that I'm picking up the right stitches with the live stitches so that it doesn't, there is a tendency, I've done this before certainly, to like pick up at the wrong rate, and then you get like a slant, right? Your stitches don't line up right, so they kind of get slanted like this. I started this hat as my first charity knit of the year. So every year, I think I've mentioned this before, I like to do a couple of charity knits, and last year I didn't start until like September, October, and so it felt kind of rushed. I didn't think I got done what I wanted to get done. So this year, what I want to try to do is like do at least one project a month that's going to be a charity knit. So worst case scenario, in December, I have 12 items to donate. So I chose the size that I did, the junior size, because I tend to do more like knits for children and young adults. And I thought this color would be nice for like a teen girl. I don't know that much about teen girls nowadays, but if I was a teen girl, I would like this color. Not much else to say about this at this point. This is a very popular pattern, and I can see why. It's just like such a classic hat design, and the pattern is very well written, like a lot of Petite Knit's stuff. I will check in next week to let you know how successful I was on picking up the right stitches. What I actually might do is like line these up a little better. So like count out the stitches and then make sure that they're lined up every 5-10 stitches, something like that. because I really don't want to twist it, and I'm really afraid I'm going to twist it. But we shall see. Tune in next week for another exciting edition of what's going on with my Oslo hat. And that is all for this week. One more time, this is the start of my Oslo hat by Petite Knit. And the last thing I have to talk about today, I have not made any progress on this, but it's a little bit of an update on my Stella Quilt Cushion. So in my last episode, I showed off what I had done so far, and I mentioned that my not concern, but one thing that I was thinking about was the reason I picked up that pattern was I wanted to use a lot of these other beautiful Solitude Wool Icelandic yarns that I have in these really pretty color palette. And I was afraid that the cushion as it's written was just not going to use that much of the yarn, right? Because the whole back and the butt and the like pillow insert flap, all done in the main white color. And so I was like, I don't really know what I'm going to do. How can I change it? Can I make it double-sided and add a zipper? And folks came out with like some awesome ideas in the comments. You guys gave me so many good ideas of things to think about. So a lot of people said, maybe just work the color into the back of the pillow. Maybe do striping, maybe do color blocks, something like that to use up more of the yarn. People said, can you maybe do a blanket? How hard would it be to change it into a blanket? I think that's a great idea. And people said, just do a second pillow, which yes, that is definitely an option and would fit with like my ideas for this pillow, where it's going to go. I certainly could have two. But I do think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the back, I'm going to use the colors on the back as well as the front. And so one nice thing about the pattern is it gives you the instructions for the two quilt cushions. And then it kind of has like a freestyle area where like they've laid out the squares and how you connect them, but they don't have any color on them. They're just kind of the squares kind of knit corner to corner. And you can go in and fill that out how you want so that you can envision your own kind of pattern to it. So I started looking at quilt designs that used kind of that those half and half triangles for some ideas of different ways I could do the back. I thought, well, maybe I'll just do all different triangles all the way across. That could look really cool. But I think what I'm going to do is I found a quilt pattern from Susie Williams on Susie Quilts called the Starling Quilt Pattern. And this was the basic motif here. And so what it is basically is you've reversed the star motif. So instead of the background being white and the star being in colors, the background is in different color blocks and the star is white. And I think that is a really cool way to do it because it has the same vibe as the front, but it's a little bit of a different feel. And it allows me to use more of the yarn and also have a pillow that's fully reversible. So depending on my mood, I can flip it however I want. I won't do the colored diamond in the center. I'll do the whole star white and I'll just do those edge pieces in blocks of the different colors. Because I'm doing that, it means I'm not going to be able to do the flap, the insert flap, like the pattern recommends and has written. And so I'm going to need a different way to insert the pillow. I can either insert it and just sew it up, but I think what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to insert a zipper at the top or the bottom that's fairly hidden so that whatever I put inside the pillow I can take out to wash and put back in and zip it up. I just wanted to say once again, thank you so much for the ideas. I really do appreciate it. I thought it was awesome, all the great things. People had really great ideas. There were some other things that were in that video about how to fix my, I had some issues with tension and color work in socks that I was knitting magic loop. People had great ideas for that. I need to look into that a little bit more and figure out what I'm going to do there. And yeah, it's just, I love hearing from you guys. People are so smart. You have so many good ideas. And so yeah, thank you again. I really appreciate it. All right, so that is all I have for today. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of what I'm doing, please go ahead and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching today, and I will see you in the next one.